Welcome to Let's Talk Finances. I'm Jeremy. Today we are speaking with a good friend of mine, Michleen Mickel. She's a scholar and I wanted to share her perspective on what is it like to go to college, getting multiple degrees, and getting work. We spoke right after Christmas 2020 and we talked about social work. We had a great conversation about mental health and what it was like for her to live through 2020, especially with a line of work. With no further ado, let me introduce you to Michleen Mickel. Hi Michleen, thank you so much for coming on. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. How was your Christmas?
It was well. It was spent some time with the family.
That's awesome. So one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you is when I look at you, I look at a scholar, someone who's done accomplished a lot through school and currently working helping patients with their mental health, correct? So
Yeah.
I think that's huge. And that's something I would love to chat about is the mental aspect of things. But can you walk us through your college journey? So like what degrees you have, where did you go, etc.
Yeah. So I graduated high school in '08. I'm first generation from my parents to go to higher education. I went to Fullerton College. I used the grant. I can't remember what's it called, but I was able to get grants through um, the from the community, and
Right.
I would register, get the units, and then they would reimburse the money for me. I can't remember the name of the grant, I think it depend on the family income.
Situation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did college for 2.5 years. I took about a semester off, and then I went to San Francisco State University. I got financial aid from there, and then I was there for 2 years, and then took 2 years off, and then I got my master's, and I got financial aid loans, and that's where I'm at.
A master's in what?
In social work, master's in social work, and a BA in psychology.
Got it.
I transferred from Fulton College to SF State, but I didn't get like an AA or anything like that. I just transferred.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's awesome. How's San Francisco? Because I know you lived there for 2 years. How was that for you?
It was the best part of my college career.
I remember visiting you out there. That was fun.
Yeah, it was definitely the best 2 years of my college career. If it's a career, I had the best time there. I had the best time with my professors. It was a very diverse school and program. It was impacted, so it was really hard to get into psychology.
Okay.
Because it's just in a very impacted major. But the school there and the professors were wonderful. So that was the best time of my college time.
That's good. What led you to psychology? How did you find your calling?
I had a high school teacher. His name was Mr. Hart. He was my psych teacher, and I just really enjoyed his class. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a pharmacist. I don't know where that came from, but
you wanted to be a drug dealer?
Yeah, right. A pharmacist. Yeah, that's very odd. But I really liked the movie, like the movies that we watched, and I really got into it. And we watched this movie called Beautiful Mind, and it's about John Nash, which is a true story. Yeah, I just fell in love with it. The human mind is so fascinating.
It really is. I think the brain is the most interesting thing there is. I mean, I listen to various podcasts about science, and it's just it always amazes me, no matter what I'm learning about.
Definitely.
So now your work. I mean, how's that going with COVID and everything that's going on in the world?
So I have to go into work. I have to go into the clinic, into the office. Everything is telehealth right now, so it's everything is via phone, unless we feel like a client is in crisis or would benefit from getting out of their home. So just to reduce the isolation. Um, it's been interesting just because I started in June, so I started in the midst of COVID, so I never
Right.
really met my clients till
Before.
I never met
Yeah.
them. I didn't get to meet a lot of them till right before the second shutdown happened. So I
Okay.
started bringing them in, kind of seeing if it would be beneficial for them to come in. So if they're experiencing any isolation, I bring them in. Um, and we have to be 6 feet apart, and then wearing the mask the
Uh-huh.
whole session. So it's been a little hard with some of the clients. A lot of them are older, so it's a little bit harder for them to breathe in with the mask. But other than that, it's been okay.
Has it been helping them to be able to be with you? Right?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. A lot of them were experiencing a lot of isolation, and since they are older, a lot of them are by themselves.
Oh, poor
They don't
things.
have a lot of family, so
Okay.
it's a bit more rough on them.
And in a typical world, you would be meeting, it wouldn't be over the phone, right? You would be meeting in person, correct?
Yeah, we'd be
Got
meeting
it.
in person. We can still do telehealth even after this or before this, but majority it'll be in person for everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know we can't go into detail, but what's the general background? What led to these people having these mental health issues? Do you know?
Well, a lot of it is predisposition. So a lot of it is depending on the person, their upbringing, if they experience any trauma. A lot of the people that I work with have a lot PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
So a lot of them experience really high and intense traumatic events in their lives, throughout childhood and as they grow older.
Is there any particular patient that struck you and kind of moved you in a sense where you actually learned from their experience?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of my clients who have PTSD is just it's interesting how a lot of it manifests. Sometimes, you know, it manifests in like OCD or like really bad anxiety disorder or just the way the triggers might come up for them in just day to day life. They can be going on in their day and they can see something, smell something, or even see somebody that resemble whoever caused that trauma, and then they just get stuck in that moment.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of want to switch gear now.
Mhm.
What's your take and the link between mental health and finance and money?
Oh, there isn't really a link. So a lot of the so my organization is a nonprofit county based or county contracted. So we work with the county, and we're basically the middle clinic. So we have so you have higher level of care, which is when before you get the client stabilized, and that's going to be through the county. And then you come to us. So all of the clients that we work with are on Medi-Cal or SSDI or SSI. A lot of them can't really work due to their mental illness.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of them do struggle financially. Some, if they're stable enough, they can work part-time if they can.
Okay.
But a lot of them are, I have a lot of clients, like a lot of their objectives is to work on like financial goals or budgeting or stuff like that, because all of them are on SSI, SSDI. A lot of them are homeless.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and then the housing crisis, and then um, getting them on the housing list takes forever. Like some of my clients have been homeless for over 10 years,
Wow.
and they still can't get housing, and they're on the housing list. So it's a lot of disconnect between finance and mental illnesses.
It's fair to say there's a stigma, right? I think
Hmm. Hmm.
like we don't treat mental illness as something
Like
like
diabetes.
right, right.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is it so hard to treat it equally?
It's the stigma, like you said, it's a stigma. It's something that we don't know. It's something that we can't see. It's not visible. It's, it's associated a lot with, especially with homeless folks who, I mean, we all see and
Right.
hear, folks
But
in the street yelling and
that's
not
probably why
knowing.
they're homeless. It's because of the mental
Yeah,
health, not the other way around.
yeah,
So that's interesting to see your perspective on that
yeah.
end.
Yeah, like I have a clients who've been working for 10 years plus, and then something traumatic happened in their life. They lose their job, they lose their home, just like that.
Wow.
So it's there's a lot of disconnect between finance and mental illness.
So let's talk about you. How has money played a role in your personal growth?
Honestly, I've actually was talking to my partner earlier about this. I never really had a good role models in terms of finance, especially with my parents.
I was gonna ask you about that too.
Yeah, no, it's especially with that. Even like when I was living back in Palestine, we never really like we never owned a home. It was always kind of rental and um I don't think like it just that I never really had a talk about finance or saving. So it's a struggle for me to save. But I'm working on it. Um, but yeah, even with college, I had to figure out my own financial stuff by myself to figure out the loans, like the FAFSA and all of that by myself because I am a first generation as well.
And it's a lot of work
Yeah, it is, and
to
it's very
get
confusing.
that done. So what was your view on money when you were in college?
Mm, I was working full time. I was
Uh-huh.
working at a restaurant full time, so I was able to somewhat save because I didn't have to live alone, so I was not paying rent, so that was easier. Um, but I also like when I moved to Portland to get my master's, I depended a lot on my financial aid to get me through because I was working part time and I couldn't really work more than part time
Right.
get through and all of that. So I had to depend a lot on the financial aid when I was going through college.
And now, what's your view on money? Has that shifted between being college
Um,
to now?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm trying to be more mindful of my money, especially as a social worker. Right now, so it's also like a licensing ish thing with social work. So I'm an ASW, which is an associate social worker, and I'll be an ASW for about 2 years till I get 3,000 hours under my belt in clinical, like on a one-on-one with with clients, and then I can apply to my license. I mean, then there'll be a boost of money, but right now I'm barely making much or anything, even with my master's, which is wild.
So you've got 2 years and a half to go until.
I have to do 3,000 hours. So I have about 2 years or so, or like a year and a half. Because with social workers, we get to count all of our hours at work. So it's 40 hours per week.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Even with where I'm at with my position, it's still not enough to cover like a lot of, like basic stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough, and I've always heard that about this field,
Yeah.
and that's why I have so much admiration for people who like look past that and really focus on who's at the other end. So
Sure.
I appreciate you.
Mhm.
We talk a lot about nurses and essential workers.
Mhm.
What you're doing is essential. Mental health is a big issue, and I mean, having that myself with depression,
Mhm.
it's huge.
It is. It
And
definitely is.
we need help, and we need to talk about this topic. So I'm kind of glad that we opened the forum today with this,
Yeah.
and that we be more open, and that we try to understand it more. I think that's even more important, is to
Mhm.
understand the reason why we have these things, how we can cope with those things.
Yeah, it's creating that empathy with people, and it's really hard to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people most likely are sympathizers, not empathetic with others.
Right.
Mhm.
And so for people watching, what is one thing they could do to, I guess, deal better with when they come across with people who have those illnesses?
Just to be mindful and respectful. They are still human. They are still their own person. They have their own autonomy. Just to listen, or they just to listen to them and check in if they have like family members or anything like that. Sometimes they just need to talk, not necessarily have a solution, just vent it out. But just being mindful of them and treat them with respect. They're people as well. They're not less than because they have mental illness.
And then how do we avoid to be emotionally caught in the moment? Because it's easy to be frustrated and in such things.
Like with the situation, or like with the
Yeah, because I mean, because I teach music, and
oh,
I do have a handful of autistic students, and
mhm.
for the most part, I understand where they come from. But there's some times where I have a really hard time to keep my composure and
Right,
get frustrated. So,
right.
what would be a tip to kind of deal better with that?
Deep breathing, I would say taking a break for yourself, because also you're taking in on their stress as well. So checking in with yourself too, with your body, and if you need to, like, just 5 minutes away from the kid, just I'm sure they have an aide with them usually.
Yeah, usually a family member. Yeah,
A family member, just let them know that you need a minute. Just do some deep breathing and then just come back, because you do understand that they're going through a lot because they can't express certain things, and it's just they get frustrated. And then maybe even doing some research in terms of how to, like, work with some autistic kids, or depending on their needs. So just meeting them where they're at, but also checking in with yourself and making sure that you're okay too.
so almost a mini meditation.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, just like deep breathing, just doing like 4 or 5 deep breaths. Taking it in, holding it for 4 seconds, and letting it all out. That helps a lot.
awesome. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
Now, in your studies, because I'm very curious about the psychology of money. In your
Mm-mm.
studies, did you ever study about the psychology of money, how people deal with money, and
Um, we I in SF State, San Francisco State, we did touch up on positive psychology, and that's where the money comes in. I didn't really dive too deep into it, because that was not really
your
my
field? Yeah,
where I was going. But I know a lot of like there was one professor that did a lot of research on it over there, and they did concluded to a part where there's a correlation with the amount of money you get and then your happiness. But then once you exceed that money, like that line, it's not really doing much. But that's as far as I go about it. But in terms of my, like, I guess in my field, seeing how much my clients struggle financially, it's a lot on them.
I'm
It
sure.
affects, what they eat, where do they live, where can they afford to live, because they get, a lot of them do have supportive housing. So a lot of the apartments they actually live at is not in the greatest areas. So,
Right.
and that's what they get as housing support.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not. That's all I know about it. I know. I mean, to a certain point, you need that support.
Yeah,
You know.
and I've heard similar things. I don't remember the number, but I'm gonna
I don't remember either.
ballpark it. I think it was about 60,000.
Something
And
like
then,
that.
and then when you pass that threshold, it doesn't really affect your happiness
Right.
level.
Yeah. It's something around the number.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it makes me think of when we talk about that. It makes me think of our previous guest, Rob.
Mhm.
He talked about living. His goal is to live on half of his income, meaning
Mhm.
to be able to survive with half of his income and then saving the rest.
Right.
So that theory, 60,000, really, if you live on 60,000 and you're able to save whatever is
Leftover.
the overflow, I guess,
Yeah.
you'd be able to be. I mean, I think that's a great recipe for happiness right there.
Definitely. Yeah. To have
Um,
that overflow saved for emergencies, because you never know what happens.
yeah. Absolutely.
Hmm.
I mean, I know a thing or two back in the day when I had zero savings and I would have a problem with my car. There goes sleepless nights.
Hmm.
So when I heard that, I thought that was genius. So
Yeah,
um,
I like that.
now we talk about that, it makes sense a little bit more.
Hmm.
Now you briefly mentioned your parents. I guess, is there anything you took away from their lack of knowledge, I guess, about finances?
Yeah, well, me wanting to actually like have better, more, more awareness of finance. I don't really want to struggle.
And that probably fired you up to go to school, I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And um, but again, even with my field, it's more I have to climb up the like the the ladder of social work.
Right.
And you have to get the experience. And the good thing about social work is it is a very broad field. Like you can go into government, you can go into policy work, you can work in schools, which is eventually my goal. But it's pretty broad field to work in.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not very knowledgeable in the field, so I'm glad you break that down for us.
There's even one of the senators in Oregon is a social worker from the same school I went to.
Wow.
Mhm.
Okay, so is he driving a lot of policies towards?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Let's talk about that. Have you seen changes? What did he accomplish over there so far?
I don't know. I haven't really kept up with him much, but
Okay.
he was the first Latino, and he's the youngest person to be in the Senate in Oregon.
What is his name?
I can't. I'll have to look
Okay,
him.
I'll have to Google it, but that's cool.
I'll share his information with you. But yeah, he's one of the youngest. He's the first Latino to be there, and he's a social worker. He's a macro social worker. So social work has like 3 different tiers. You have the micro, the meso, and the macro. The micro is when you're working one-on-one with a lot of clients. The meso is more community-based work line, and then the macro will be more policy-driven changes.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Hmm.
Never heard of that. That's cool.
Yeah. So there's
Um, are there any other figures like that you look up to, or that you really like? Pat, I
um,
guess you're behind.
well, my definitely my professor from Portland. She worked in a lot of nonprofits, and that were non-federally funded, so they were more on the community base, and I really enjoyed that. So a lot of community grassroots led work. Um, that's what she's done. She even closed down the gap between the highest paying person and the lowest paying person in a nonprofit. Because when you look at it in nonprofit, the CEO gets paid way more than the lowest payer in a nonprofit, and it's supposed to be nonprofit. So yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. So the nonprofit sector is quite interesting. Learning more about it is just fascinating.
Well, I'm gonna learn firsthand
Yeah,
with Young Money Savvy because we just
yeah,
turned nonprofit,
right.
and it is totally different than running a business.
It is.
Totally different.
It really is. You have to find the grants. You have to find where to get funds and how to get funded and all of that. It's a
Yep.
lot.
Oh yeah, and then you can't just make decisions. You have to run it by the board.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I
Hmm.
like the structure. I should have done this way from the get go.
Yeah.
But that's one thing of being stubborn.
It could be very beneficial and helpful if I think if it's ran correctly, because a lot of some experience, a lot of the CEOs in the finance in the nonprofit has kind of got power hungry and just took a lot of the money into for themselves.
Interesting, because that's exactly the opposite concept of a nonprofit.
Hmm.
Interesting. Well,
Exactly.
I'm gonna have to look into that. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was happening in there.
Yeah. It is.
So 2020 has been like really weird year.
Yes,
How have you personally like coped with COVID?
um, it was rough, to be honest. I lost my job before I got this one I believe in January, um, right before. COVID hit, and that was a struggle, looking for a job and then having to apply. So before, after losing my job, I didn't have my ASW, so I had to apply for that.
Okay.
And having my degree out of California, I had to adjust it. So that was another set of money that I had to like spend on. So it was a struggle. And then I was like, well, I can apply for unemployment. So I did unemployment right before COVID started, and I was on it for about 4 months. And so, which was nice, you know.
So a little help.
Yeah. So it definitely helped a lot, yeah. And then just getting the job, I mean, that was...
What a blessing.
Yeah.
What a blessing. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was definitely a blessing. I started in June, so it's been 6 months now.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So financially, what are some things that you want to learn, or what are some things that you wish you knew, I guess?
I guess just learning how to budget and like what, you know, just just learning how to budget my check, given like, you know, living situation and all of that. And then also figuring out my financial loans, and those are just...
That's I mean,
they're very stressful.
It is. And I've sat down with some friends and they said, oh, I think it's this number. And then we go and log in, and their faces as they realize that their loans are not the amount that they thought.
No, my loans were, they increased because I went to school out of state. So with that being said, you know, even though I lived there for like, you know, I passed the year living there, they still charged me as an out of state, even though I've been there. Yeah.
And there's no way to fight that?
No. Wow. No, you'd have to start as a resident, so you don't get paid, so you don't get charged as an out of state.
So you would have to live there a year before starting school.
Right.
Well, take notes, watchers. Like that's good to know.
That's important
I did not know about that.
Yeah. So if you're planning to go out of state, definitely recommended to go at least, you know, before that period. Some states, I think they have it 6 months or so. I don't know, just depending on the state. And go live that amount before having to do out of state, because it's rough.
I guess this would be perfect for people who want to take a gap year.
Yeah.
Live there, experience the city.
Live there, experience it, get to know it.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. I recommend that.
You know, it's funny because I'm from Europe, but I heard from someone who's not European that there's a tradition where once you graduate high school, you take a year to travel. I should probably just go home and ask my friends if that's what they did. But I heard that's a thing where you just go out and explore the world before you
your
career.
You know, funny you brought that up. When I went to before I got accepted to school to Portland, and I had to go for orientation before school started. So I just went there for like a few days by myself, stayed in a hostel. And I met this German guy who just graduated high school, and he was going solo traveling by himself in America. He got himself a little janky car to just travel in.
What?
And he was literally going across America to rock climb and boulder and all that fun stuff. And I actually, we still somewhat connected like through WhatsApp and Instagram, but he took a year off from after high school.
I think that's genius.
It's amazing.
Before making, you know, a major financial decision, because going to school is a major financial decision that I wish I had thought about before signing away my contracts. That would be such a cool concept if we did this here too.
Yeah, I feel like it's not very supported here. I mean, for example, even hostels and lodges. Hostels are bigger in Europe than America. They're still very expensive here.
I did not know they existed here. There's some here?
There are some here.
Wow.
Like I said, I stayed one in Portland.
Okay.
And it was totally a hostel, like a hostel, you know, European hostel thing. like, the bunk beds and people from all over and all of that.
Right.
Um,
Darn you, that movie that makes Americans think it's bad. It's not.
yeah, yeah.
When I mentioned going to a hostel when we go to my wife when we go to Europe, she goes, "But the movie." No.
No, it's not like that. No, Europe. Like I stayed in hostels in Europe as well and Asia, and they're wonderful. They're
cheap.
they're they're super cheap.
Some awesome people there.
Yeah, I stayed in a one in the Philippines for $10, right, with an ocean view, like
wow.
Right in the ocean. I would just go downstairs and there's the ocean.
That is awesome. Well, the Philippines is already cheap as it is, so I can't imagine. That's pretty awesome. An ocean view in a hostel. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that concept is not really here in the U.S.
Why is it that like finances is such a weird question mark for high school and college students? Why is it that we don't know these things?
They just don't teach us in high school. I mean, even in econ class, I remember taking economic class in high school. You take like government and then econ.
Yeah.
Honestly, I hated that class. I hated my teacher because she only focused on the ASB kids. She never really cared. And even when we talked about stocks, and now I'm like semi interested in like the stocks in all of that because that's where a lot of like the investments happen, and I don't know anything about it.
Right.
Nothing.
I mean, Michleen, a great resource, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Investopedia.com.
What is it?
Investopedia. So Investopedia.com.
Okay.
Great website, very detailed. You learn so much from there. Whenever I have a doubt, that's where I go. So if you want to learn more about that, definitely you got to go there.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like Wikipedia, but for investment.
Okay.
It covers everything. I mean, even if you want to learn about how financial advisors work, like what type of financial advisors, what is fiduciary duty, that kind of stuff. Like,
wow. Yeah, I don't even know.
Very technical. It's really technical and it's very dry, but
it's informative, huh?
It really is, and you could just pick a few things a day, and you learn so much from there.
Yeah, I'll have to look into it. And I also think it's such a, we don't talk about finance because people are so private about it. Whenever we talk about like, for example, a CEO in a nonprofit getting paid this much money and then the lower pay, like they don't allow us, like people don't see their paychecks, the difference.
Right.
If they do, they'll be enraged about it. So I think it's just like they made it as a taboo to talk about finance.
It's interesting because I felt people were more flaunting about their money in the US as opposed to Europe. Europe is a real taboo. I mean, we could talk about sex and all different things, but when it comes to money and your income, that's very private. So I felt as I moved here, that people are way more open, but yet we don't know much. I mean, I've had the privilege as I was working with financial advisors to sit with various clients, and these are professionals,
right?
Nurses, doctors. No clue what's in the 401k. No clue what's going on with anything. They're just, and they're wondering where their money's going. So, and I guess, I mean, to a certain level, it's okay. I think I'd much rather them spend their time and really excel at their work and paying us to kind of deal with that. But not everyone can afford to pay for financial planners, financial advisors. Yeah. So why is it that, especially in a country where we really want small businesses to thrive, we want businesses to take off, entrepreneurs to really drive up the economy, but they don't know how to deal with finances? And as I went through that process, I realized too that business finances and personal finances are two different ball games.
Oh, I bet.
And it as you're a small business owner, you kind of become one. It's very interesting how that work, but I mean, this is so essentially that this is why I'm having these conversations, so we can learn from each other and
Hmm.
talk about this. Just
Yeah.
like we should talk about mental illness.
Right. Right.
We need to talk about these topics, and I'm hoping that we learn from each other. We spark conversations, we spark ideas, and
Definitely.
that in the future, it's no longer taboo.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
we know more about these kind of things. So
And even it should be like part of our education in high school, even with taxes. It's
taxes. Don't
hard.
even get me started, Michleen. Taxes.
It's
That is a one thing. I'm like, I'm just gonna hire a CPA because I don't understand. It always changes every year,
right.
and so complicated. I just yeah.
It's
I
very
mean, for so many years, I was a 1099, and I didn't understand the concept of doing my quarterlies. This is my
complicated.
first year doing a full year, paying all my quarterlies like I should have all these years. So
I don't even know what that is.
so when you're an independent contractor, meaning you're not getting a W-2, you're not employed
Mm.
by a company, there
Hmm.
you just have a contract and they send you a 1099. That is not taxed. So you're supposed to every quarter calculate your taxes and pay the federal government your taxes.
Oh,
Insane. Yeah. So I mean, I did the way I went about it. I'm in 20%. Whatever is 20%, I don't touch it. I put it in a savings account. And when
okay.
it comes to quarterly date, whatever's in there, just throw it. Hopefully, I overpaid and they'll send me some. I'll
Right,
let you know
right.
next year in
Yeah.
April. But yeah, crazy
Wow.
concept. I mean, the funny thing is, I'm surrounded by people who are 1099 business owners, so they've talked about that. But I was like, it's taxes, too complicated.
Right.
And here I am. I mean, the past 2 years, I had a major tax bill because I didn't pay my
Really?
taxes on. Yeah, especially
Wow.
especially the past 2 years because before that I had a mixture of W-2 and 1099, but then I
Oh,
went full time 1099, and that's a
right.
lot of money, a lot of taxes due. So that bit me in the butt pretty much.
Oh, wow.
So
So
if
the
you're listening,
quarterly,
1099 pay your quarterlies.
so that's every like three
3
months
months, yeah.
or
It's
10 weeks?
January. So that the last payment is due on in January. Then I believe it's either April, May,
Okay.
and then September. Jeez, I need to review that, but it's not laid out perfectly 3 months.
Okay, okay. That's good.
There's one where it's like 2 months apart, and then there's a
Okay.
gap between January and either April or May. Um,
Oh.
yeah, I mean, I just go on the IRS
Yeah, yeah.
website and it tells me. So that's how I know the next one is January.
Okay.
But
Wow.
yeah,
I didn't even know anything about that.
yeah. So I mean, to teach taxes would be a daunting task.
Yeah, it will.
Um, but maybe mentioning things like that would be cool.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
I mean, there's some tools out there that are free, I guess. Like Mint. There's other apps that let you kind of budget. There's a big one, but it's not free. It's called Enab. You need a budget.
Okay.
I'm on their Reddit and people are raving about it.
Enough.
I mean, I've found my system. I use a combination of Mint and do my own spreadsheets.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I love numbers and I love seeing green,
Yeah.
red. Like when I'm green, when I'm red.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually interlink the sheet. So if whatever calculation I do on one, it goes into the next one. Yeah. So that's my little tea, cup
Yeah,
of tea
yeah.
right there. But yeah, ENAB, you need a budget. What else?
Okay.
I notice more, but um, there are ways to kind of keep track. I think one of the most underrated things that people don't do is writing things down, just to look at where your money's
Yeah.
going, how much money's coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and right there, being aware of where everything is going,
Definitely,
keeping
yeah.
track of every penny
Yeah, seeing
is
it like
actually way more powerful than trying to save so much. Because what if you're saving and actually getting in the red because you're not paying your debt, or you're
Right.
missing out on, I don't know, something else. You're missing out on investing because you actually have enough to be able to invest at the same time as saving, stuff like that. Or you realize you're spending $200 at Starbucks every month and you
Right.
actually don't like that, but then you find yourself spending $100 on groceries and you love that, the fact that it's not that much, stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of guilty because this past year with COVID, it's been really tough. I just rather not think about how much money I'm getting and what's going in the bank. But I mean, looking at the savings, I think that's good enough for me.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Keep
I think
sanity.
that
But
was
yeah, it's it's something that I agree should be taught. If not, then I would love to have Young Money Savvy be that in the future,
yeah.
where we could maybe come in schools or maybe hold seminars and stuff like that after
At
school.
workshops.
Yep. And
Mhm.
just do the basics. I think that's very
Yeah.
powerful. Um, in college, well, actually, I've been seeing classes, personal
Yeah.
finance. So it's out there. So if you're watching this, you can take a personal finance. You don't even have to go to Cal State. You could go a place like a junior college,
Mhm.
Citrus College, Monsac, something
Yeah.
like that.
I feel like they'd have them a lot on workshops, like even online.
I'm sure there's tools online too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people mention Dave Ramsey. Um, wow. Now, there's a podcast I've been listening to. It's really good. How to Money podcast.
How to money.
How to Money. And what I love about these guys, they drink a different beer every episode. So they make us discover beer and then they
Cool.
talk about money. How cool is that?
I love
Beer and
that.
money. It's fantastic. I suggest you check it out. It's
I'll
really
definitely check it out. I love that they talk about beer and money.
yes. How cool is that? I'm thinking of sending them a beer.
Yeah.
I really want to pick out something they haven't tasted yet.
Right.
So that's a challenge because they've been at it for a couple of years. So we'll see.
They
We'll
probably
see.
have an array of beers.
All right, Michleen. So I like to end our segment with fun fast five. So that's 5 questions that I give you like 30 seconds to just answer. It's supposed to be fun, and you don't have to take it so seriously.
Okay.
You ready?
Ready.
All right. So the first one is the best $5 you spent this past 12 months.
I think on a baby plant.
Baby plant. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Get some O2
Plants.
around. Yes.
Yeah.
Number 2, if money was not an issue, you had all the money in the world, what is that one unnecessary thing you would buy?
I think maybe a whole new wardrobe.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Definitely a whole new wardrobe. Because clothes are expensive.
Yes, absolutely. All right, the third one, the best money mistake you've made.
I would have to say about tattoos.
Really?
Yeah, I really tattoos are expensive.
They are, but I mean,
Right.
yours are pretty kick butt. I mean,
Right, but that means they're expensive.
yes. I see your point
It's the
now.
best mistake, but definitely have to be more mindful of the tattoos.
Okay, take note, guys.
Yeah.
All right, so our last guest said he didn't want to like give a bad rap to a business or a place. So you don't have to be specific if you don't want to for this next one. But can you name a thing, a place, a service that made you go, "This is the last time I'm buying this"?
Mm.
Do you want me to give you an example?
Yeah.
So for me, and it's the same one I mentioned, it's going to this postal place and buying stamps there and being overcharged there instead of going to USPS. So I'm like, this is the last time I'm buying this here.
Oh, okay. Damn. um, bell peppers from Vaughn's. They're too expensive there.
Sometimes you just gotta go the cheap route, you know?
Yeah.
All right, and then the last one. What is the best money tip you got in your early 20s?
I feel like I didn't get really that one, but definitely learning how or trying to learn how to budget. Like people like being encouraged to budget, but then I was in my early 20s. I was working as a server and I had cash.
How do you keep track of cash, right?
Exactly.
Well, this was fun. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.
It was great. Well, I mean, I wish you an awesome 2021. And yeah, I'll see you next year, I guess.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.